Hello, today I want to walk you through the steps to get the VRGO to work with Unity. Basically, to do this, we actually need to use an external plugin called Rewired, which allows the support of raw inputs. And so let's get started, and I'll sort of explain the process as we go on a bit further. The first thing we need to do is import our packages. So if you go to import package, custom package, I've put the packages on my desktop, but you can download these packages from the websites which are in the description. So the first thing we'll do is import Rewired. The order that we're actually putting these packages into our projects are quite important, so just keep that in mind as you're doing this process. So we just clicked import and we're just putting everything in now. So we just have to then wait for Rewired to put itself in, and then there's an installation process which we'll need to go through to properly integrate Rewired into the project. So this is just going to sort itself out, and then we'll need other packages as well, which if you're supporting Vive, you'll need SteamVR, and then we have our own plugin which contains the important bits that we provide. So we're just going to wait for this to compile and sort itself out, doing small assets now, and then we'll start the installation process. So this pop-up comes up saying thank you and to install it, so we'll do that. Then says it's a trial version, so this is quite important, is the 2-minute per session time limit, but this is quite useful to do if you just want to try it first before you pay anything. So we'll put that in. We'll just wait for this to sort itself out. Then it's just asking if you want to add entries to the input manager file, so we'll do that. The control map is quite useful potentially for you to use, so we'll add that in. You probably won't need what we next the touch controls, we'll probably skip that. And then documentation is probably good to have, and if you do have any further issues and things with Rewired itself, the documentation will be really useful, so we'll put that in. So just wait for this to sort itself out, and then we're done. So just click done for now, and we have Rewired now into our project. The next asset or plugin we then need is SteamVR, so we'll just import that in. So you'll wait for that to unpackage itself again, so just wait and see what will happen. So that is done there. We basically just put that in again. Just wait for that to finish itself off. And once that's done, then we can put in our own. And this is just again so we can support Vive, and a part of the package we provide actually uses some of the SteamVR scripts, so it's quite important if you want to support Vive properly with our solution that SteamVR is in the project. So there we are, lovely. Now we just need to import in our package, which is here, the VRGO plugin. Now the thing you'll notice firstly is that yeah, we've got a bunch of assets here, but the SteamVR or Vive support is provided in a separate plugin within it. So if we double click VRGO, you'll see this VRGO SteamVR plugin. So we're going to do that again, and this just adds a few extra prefabs and extra script into the scene. And so with that done, we should be able to just open our scene, one of our scenes, our demo movement scene, and this is it. So we're in the game view scene here. It's very simple setup, but then you should be able to just basically click play, and we already have movement into our scene. So that's basically just the guide to putting everything in. I'll next break down all the sort of different components and what they actually do. So we've got the assets in. Now let's take a look at actually what we've been provided. So the first thing probably worth looking at is the joystick element identifier. This is just really useful to just see the chair and whether it's properly connected. One thing just to do before you run is make sure the target eye is on none, main display. If we hit play, you should soon see these stats on the left hand side, and this is like the stats of the chair itself. And it's just useful just so you can see that everything's working, so you can see I'm moving the chair there. One thing just worth mentioning is that Z value will only print out in the purple/pink mode, which is for joystick and joystick rotation, basically sort of left stick X, left stick Y, right stick X. So that's just good to see and sort of look at, just in case you have any issues. Let's now go back to our demo movement scene, just break down the players. So there's 3 different players, and basically they each comprise of supporting different headsets, and I had to break this down for a number of reasons, really in terms of just making sure the code will compile and it being as easy as possible, but I'll show you why when we look at the code more properly. If we start with the player Oculus, so they all share this VRGO movement script, so each player has one of these on. The thing just to notice immediately is that it's relatively simple. The rewired bits are probably the bits of interest, so we've got a rewired player here and an ID. So basically when the game starts, we just got to wait and initialize rewired itself properly first. Once that then happens, we can then process input, and the thing of interest is just that we get the axes for left stick X, left stick Y, and multiply it by movement speed. And just in terms of this part, basically we have sort of 2 variants of movement available to you if you wish to use it. One of which sort of just takes into account which way the player is facing with their HMD and uses that as the forward. And the other is a more literal thing of the character, or the transform of the character, and the rotation of that. And so depending on what sort of movements you want to support, you can use one of those 2 modes, and sort of the character movement solution also ties in with rotation, which I'll sort of talk about in a little bit. But once that's done, then we move the character basically. So that's the VRGO movement script. If I go back to my prefabs again, so the other thing with the Oculus one is it has a recenter Oculus script, which is very simple, it just resets. Notice that we can use the Unity Engine.VR namespace here, which when we compare to the player Vive and its recenter script, you'll see why we couldn't package the whole package into one thing, which is that the this script needs to actually have the Valve.VR namespace, which only comes with SteamVR. So we had to package that separately. Just notice as well, when we reset, we do reset the player, but then we also have to make sure that the tracking universe is seated, and this is really important as recentering only works in seated mode. So just keep that in mind if you wonder why the game's not recentering. So that's the players. One thing further just to look at is the demo rotation scene. So as I said before, we also can support rotation if you wish to. So just looking at our rotation scene, the only difference is this extra script added on. So similar thing here where got update, got initialize the input, and then when the input's being processed, it grabs the right stick's data and basically multiplies it by a sensitivity value to rotate the player. One thing to note with rotation is that it rotates the entire player, including the camera. So just keep that in mind. It's probably worth trying different solutions out and seeing if any of them work for you or which solution works best. So that's it really. The next part we'll look at is the input manager, which we'll take a look at. So next part we probably just want to take a look at is the rewired input manager, and this is quite a big object, so I'm going to break it down to several steps. The first thing to notice is the data files asset, and what we've actually done for the sake of simplicity is provide our own data file list rather than use their built-in one, and this is just so that you can see the effects of it much more easily, rather than with the 150 or so controllers Rewired itself supports. But what you may wish to do is, if you find the alternative one in this is internal data controllers, so you can see the original list is here. What you may actually wish to do instead is add the VRGO to this master list here, and then you can assign that to your input manager, so use the controller data files version instead. But for the sake of simplicity for us, we're going to stick with the original list. But yeah, what I'll do is I'll just break down the editor now and explain the settings we have set up here. So when we created this, the settings should be relatively fine, to be honest. These settings here didn't change any defaults or anything at all. The only thing you may wish to think about is whether you need to poll like access information in the fixed update or the on GUI functions. You just need to check them on if you think you will. But otherwise, we'll start looking at different sections and just see what is on there. So the players is probably the most important thing first, where basically you start off with no players, so we had to add a new one, so this is player 0 here. One thing worth mentioning is we assign a keyboard on start, but we don't assign a mouse on start. And this is actually worth thinking about if you're going to use the yellow mode, the keyboard and mouse mode, or not. So if you are, you may wish to actually assign the mouse and start. We've turned this off for now just because when you are testing it, say in the other modes, the mouse is still detected, and so you might have sort of discrepancies where, because your mouse has moved a little bit, you've actually rotated in game. So it's just worth thinking about whether you actually need to support the mouse or not, but you can if you wish to, and just check that on if you do. Next thing to look at then is the maps. So you actually have to assign default maps. So again, this is like empty, and we've added an entry, so you can do something similar to this. So, but we only need one, so we just got joystick map 0. You do the same with the keyboard maps, same for the mouse maps, and that's it. Basically, that's set up. It's done for the player. Next thing to take a look at is the actions. So the actions here, we have 3 actions set up, and these are sort of like the middlemen who basically, when the access information is picked up from the controller, they are assigned to actions, and then in game you're reading from actions. So we have left stick X, left stick Y, and right stick X, which, as you saw in the code earlier, these actions correspond to those same strings that we were polling from. So that's that setup, and yeah, that should be fine. The next thing then to take a look at is the joystick maps. So you'll notice that with the VRGO asset, we've basically assigned elements to actions. So this element list is again empty, so you can add a new one, assign the element to an element there, and then assign an action to it. So again, if you need to set up or change this specifically, you can just do that process. Again, we don't want that for now. Then take a look at the keyboard maps. Again, if you're going to support the keyboard with your application, or the keyboard mode in VRGO, you probably want to set this up as well. So this is sort of similar thing where you're assigning a key to an action. So in our case, we've got WSAD corresponding to different axes on the left stick and left stick X. So that's set up in the same way. And again, the only other thing is then the mouse map. So again, if you want to support the keyboard and mouse mode the VRGO, you'll need to make the horizontal movement of the mouse correspond to the right stick X action. And so again, we've set that up there. Other than that though, that's generally it for the input manager. I'd say you may wish to change specific settings, but that will probably be beyond the purpose of this video, and will be a specific use case to you. So that's that setup. So the last thing worth mentioning about is actually the VRGO asset itself. So as you can see in our assets VRGO, we write config directory, we've got the VRGO asset, and this asset basically is the representation of the VRGO, and sort of is for rewired, so it sort of understands whether the VRGO is a VRGO chair, and recognizes it as that rather than a generic Bluetooth device. So let's just take a look. We're actually back on the joystick element identifier scene. I just want to show you the stats again that you saw earlier. This is actually really useful, where basically we had to correlate the data from here onto specific platforms. But if I show you the editor, and I'll just break it down like the individual windows of importance, and so like the settings is the first thing you land on, and this is really just for us, so just naming controller and giving it a GUID, so on and so forth. That's pretty simple. And the element identifier is pretty simple as well. We just had to name them and what ID they correspond to, essentially. But with the platforms we're supporting, we then had to define particular information, and like here, for example, the WinDirect one, we had to do like matching criteria where this information actually becomes quite important. So in this example, you'll notice that the access count is the same as the access count here, the button count is the same as button count here, you notice the product name is the same as product name, and you'll notice that the GUID is the same GUID. And we did that for the Windows platforms, so you shouldn't really have to fiddle with these settings very much. But one thing you may wish to fiddle with is on the axes themselves. These settings should be fine, but the only thing you may wish to change is the dead zone. So the dead zone is quite high compared to many other controllers, but it's just because, as you can sort of see in this window, you can see those values are actually still slightly moving, even though the chair is actually static. And so just putting that dead zone up allows a bit more room for that. So you may wish to fiddle with these settings, which you can, but just keep in mind that if you change one here, say, if you then go to a different platform and we're on the axes again, that hasn't changed here, so you've got to make that reflect across the board. But otherwise, that's all the important stuff there, really. And if you have specific problems or issues, I'd recommend following the video very carefully, and also checking out Rewire's documentation if you're having specific issues with that. Otherwise, thank you for watching the video.